school basketball team in the country, Duncanville, is playing at Midway tonight. Duncanville, ranked number 2 in the country. They're loaded up. Black, who used to play at Baylor, his son's on the team, has been in and out of eligibility issues or whatever, but they are loaded. If you're a local high school or just a basketball fan, Duncanville playing Midway at Midway High School later on this afternoon.
And Midway's a good team.
Yeah,
they're not number 2, but they're really good.
All right, we're now joined by Kendall Couchsick from 365.com, basketball analyst, and also on occasion has been a color analyst for the radio broadcast for Baylor as well. In fact, Kendall, let's start with that. How nerve-wracking was that? You're a basketball guy, whatever you say, you know what you're talking about. But how nervous were you? Is that one of the most nerve-wracking things you've done?
So ultimately, Smokey, I wasn't too nervous about it. I was kind of surprised, given being on radio, very tough. It gave me a good appreciation of how difficult what y'all do really is. But it was one of the few times in life I've been like, I really know what I'm talking about. A lot different doing the radio than approaching a woman being like, would you like to get dinner with me? I kind of have some idea what's going on with the radio, not so much what's going on with getting dinner.
Yeah, there you go. All right, now let's discuss what Baylor has done to get out of the funk. They had those losses. I know they also battled the injuries, Akinjo and also Sohan. They're getting healthier again. But who has gotten better based on what they had to do, even if they didn't do it well initially during the slump?
Adam Flagler has improved immensely, Smokey. During the Oklahoma game, they mentioned on the broadcast that Porter Mosier said if there's any weakness to this Baylor team, it's that they really don't have a backup point guard. Didn't, I think, mean it as a slight to Adam because he didn't figure he'd really have to play too much of the point. But that first couple of games when Adam was playing point, wasn't doing a real great job running pick and rolls. At the beginning of that West Virginia game, he has that horrendous turnover where he's off base with what Matt wants to do. But you watch what he's done the last few games, and if you had a kind of clinic for how you want to run the pick and roll, Adam would be the number one, I guess, prospect you'd use to show how you want to run those actions.
What do you think is the key that kind of changes the team when Jeremy Sohan is in the game?
Paul, I think it's the ability to get flexible in a lot of different respects. So Sohan can kind of shut down defender or offensive players on one side of the court. We saw that in the game that just occurred where K-State's trying to drive. Sohan's able to stay down, get up at the last second and block. But second, he gives Baylor the ability, if they want to play a little bit smaller. That occurred in the Iowa State game that I was calling on the radio. And Sohan's ability to play that small ball 5, to kind of reminisce that 5-0 lineup I dubbed it last year with Mark Vital at the 5, gives Baylor that positional variability, which makes it harder to scout Baylor. And it also means that if John gets in foul trouble again, or if teams are trying to push John and flow out to the perimeter and defend them, Baylor will have a better option to defend, so it makes them more valuable later on in the season.
I asked Pat Nunley this a little while ago, but looking back at these past couple of games, have there been any major takeaways for you in terms of the past couple of wins and what you've seen? What stood out?
Craig, I think it's that Baylor's just a lot better team than they were even 2 or 3 weeks ago. The confidence that Matt Meyer has compared to earlier in the season, not passing up shots, but not trying to chase shots either, is a big improvement for the team. Adams' improvement, monumental. Flo, I thought, had his worst game in his Baylor career against Oklahoma State. Bounces back against Oklahoma and has a career high in minutes. And then the ability of John to play as well as he has just made the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year watch list, the top 15 defenders nationally. To be that good and not get worried about why am I not getting more minutes, is a testament to the continuation from last year. I've given the Wire analogy in the past where Davion and Jared kind of felt like Stringer and Avon in the Wire, where it was like, okay, is one guy trying to usurp the other? Whose team is it at which moment? They never had that controversy, which seemed like if I were that good at basketball and I were Davion or Jared, I might have said, my team, follow me. They allowed each other to follow themselves. I think you see that reflection in the leadership they had this season where John knows, you know what, I might only play 10 or 15 minutes a night, but if I'm going to do that, that probably means Flo's playing well, and I'm going to kill the 15 minutes a night I play.
So, this staff, to me, one of the great jobs they ever did, well, what they've done over the years, but when Tristan Clark went down that year early on, it was in January, I think, and then they had to completely change their identity, completely change all of what they did it's led to this run because they were always a team that went to the bigs and they had guard play too. Does it surprise you at all? And it did surprise you they were able to react as quickly as they were without Sohan, without Akinjo, and kind of find a way through it?
It did a little bit, Smokey, because Adam was not good at first. And so I was just like, well, they don't really have an option besides Adam. But they just said, you know what, we think Adam's got to be the answer for this to work. I give them credit for kind of staying the course on that because I thought it was let's pull the parachute and have Matt run things. I still think Matt could be successful running things. but you don't have to do that with how good Adam is. So I think it's a testament to them that, in 2019, as you mentioned, Smokey, it was, we got to play small. Jared Butler's got to take over as a freshman. This year, it's let's stay the course, and sure enough, staying the course has worked out.
What do you think about what Dale Bonner's been able to do the last couple games?
Shocked, Paul, I think is the one-word answer I would give on that front. I didn't think he was necessarily ready for prime time. The gap from D2 to D1, I don't want to take a shot at our rural communities by any stretch, but I think it's like the gap between being successful, getting dates in a town of 50 people, and being successful in the heart of Dallas, right? It's a little bit different game. Respect to you if you're in a great town of 50, but we know the game's a little bit different in a town like Dallas than it is elsewhere. For Dale to make the reads he's making at an elite level, he had a cross-court pass against K-State. It was exemplary. And then his defense has been really solid, not taking too many bad shots. There's a gap, I think, between how good James, Adam, and LJ are to where Dale is, but Dale is legitimately a Big 12 quality guard right now. And to do that in year one from D2 to D1, that's really good.
Your thoughts on Alabama? I know they've been in a little bit of a funk here as of late. At least that's what one of their reporters was talking about with us a couple of days ago. This Big 12 SEC Challenge. I mean, do you like the Big 12 SEC Challenge? And maybe if you want to add on to the Alabama question, what other games are you potentially looking forward to?
Sure, Craig. I like the challenge because it gives you a little bit of a break. I enjoy the double round robin of the Big 12, but sometimes 18 games in a row, you're like, all right, what's the difference between West Virginia and Oklahoma? There are differences, but in the end, I think some variety is fun, and to get kind of the conference rivalry, given the SEC tried to destroy the Big 12, I think it's a pretty good time. As it pertains to other games, I want to see KU Kentucky is the one that normally you look for. A little unclear if Ty Washington, their point guard, will play. But when it comes to the Alabama game proper, I think for Alabama, the most Jekyll and Hyde team in the country. I don't know if they're going to be an 8 seed in the tournament. I don't know if they'll even miss the NCAA tournament. Their analytical ratings are really high. I mean, as I'm sure the listeners know, they've got wins over Gonzaga, Houston when still at full strength with Marcus Sasser, then a loss to a just absolutely atrocious Missouri team. They shoot in the top 25 nationally in three-point attempts, yet they rank like 291st in success there. So they are the most Jekyll and Hyde team. They remind me a lot in some ways that Kentucky 2014 team that started the season top 5, ended up dropping all the way to an 8 seed and making the national title. I do not want to see that team in March, but if you're seeing them in January, you've got a shot, but they're just so inconsistent.
They are a giant killer, and yet they're about to play a stretch against Baylor tomorrow, Auburn, and then Kentucky. And that seemed like that would be right down their alley because of who they have beaten, and yet they have to have some success because of who they've lost to.
Agreed completely, Smokey. And I think I'm going to give a little bit of hot take here. I think Auburn's a little bit of a fraud right now. I know they're number 1 in the country. I don't think it's crazy to vote them number 1, but they've won a ton of close games. Their schedule is not exactly top tier. I don't think Auburn belongs in the conversation with Baylor, Gonzaga, Kansas at full strength, and UCLA. I just don't think they're as good as those teams are. And so I think that's probably where Alabama can get its jump start. But you got a top 5 team coming in Baylor. You better be ready to play if you're Alabama, and you got to play a lot better than you did against Missouri, because I can't get over just anybody saw that Missouri game earlier in the week, Konzo Martin's in-game coaching was horrible in that game. Missouri is absolutely awful. And for Alabama to find a way to lose that game when they played Missouri just speaks really, really poorly, I think, of where Alabama is right now.
All right. Thank you very much, Kendall. Great to have you on. As always, Kendall Kaut. You can read all of his X's and O's, and he breaks down games as soon as they're over and kind of goes back and looks. We got all sorts of basketball writers, and obviously Kendall Kaut right there at the top, along with Ashley Hodge, who writes. And then, Jack does some summaries of the games immediately, and he gets the audio up. And then on top of that as well, got a new guest we didn't know about?
No.
On top of that as well, we have Jason King. And he'll be at that game in Lawrence with Baylor and Kansas next week, among some others who write as well. Kamari Terrell, we just mentioned him to Grayson. It's a great story about his recruitment. Craig?
Yeah, Kamari Terrell, 4-star